Good morning world, and welcome to another episode of Tunda to the Sofa Safaris. Fine and beautiful day in store for us, not a cloud in the sky, a bit of mist around, but nice and cool. And we've once again got some lions roaring close to camp. Sounds like the limping Nharu male calling just opposite the camp, and then another one a little upstream on the Sholimi River. So that's going to be our first port of call this morning, as always. Well, actually not as always. We're not going to be checking in Tombi's den side because it does sadly appear as though she's moved it. But leopards are still very much on our radar. So let's see what the next few hours brings us, and we will be sure to bring it to you back home. Before we do get out, just a little shout out to a few of our fans, little Logan Ray in Edenvale. I hope you're enjoying all the episodes, and then also Gordon Burke's niece Melissa from Scotland. I hope this is bringing you some comfort during your self-isolation. So enjoy, folks. Cheers. So one of our requests this week was from Julie Omandari, I hope I'm pronounced that correctly, asking for a bit more footage of giraffes, and I was explaining how they haven't been as evident in the central regions of late, and I've no doubt that it's related to the presence of the lions and the denning river pride, with the activity of the males around you. Prey species aren't stupid. When there are heightened increases in predator activity, they're going to make themselves a little scarce. So if we head out to the western side, there's plenty of giraffe, and I no sooner said that we come out in the central area, and what is the first big animal that we see this morning but a giraffe. Not just any giraffe, this is one lying down. One of the more frequent questions that we do get on safari is how do giraffes sleep, and this is exactly it. Giraffes, when they lie down, they fold their legs and lie on them just the same way that a cow would back home, but rather than having the neck resting on the ground, they rest with the neck upright. When the giraffe's neck is like that, the tendons and muscles are in the relaxed position, and it requires energy and effort for them to put their heads down. So this is how they sleep. I have read constantly, and I've seen videos of youngsters in zoos doing it, where they will actually turn their head round and rest the chin on the rump, but I've never once seen that in the wild. So my belief is that this is the only way that they sleep when lying down. They can also rest standing up, but this is how they do it. Heard the lions roaring, came into the area where we suspected he might be. Very fresh tracks for him heading to the east, in the direction where the other lion was calling. So this was from this morning. It's on top of the bit of dew that settled on the ground, so I don't think we are too far behind him. So we're just going to carry on away from the dam and see if we can locate on this boy. I'm going to give you any prizes for guessing who spotted the lion again, which is on form. She was worried that being in our new vehicle she was going to lose her magic powers, which is not true. Just up ahead here you'll see our Nharu male on a bit of a mission, heading back towards the general area of the den site. He hasn't been roaring, we've been listening to see if he's been vocalizing, but he's not. He obviously knows where he wants to go, and he's now going there. So we're going to do our best to keep up with him and hopefully not hit any more trees. Such a characteristic call, this individual lion. He carries on and on at the end of his roar, far longer than any other lion I've heard, but it helps us. We lost him coming through this long grassy area, but he is calling from the opposite direction of where we lost him going. So we're going to just turn around and see if we can catch up with him again. To the area where he had been roaring, but he wasn't there. He is on the move. He's as we started our drive, we heard another lion responding to him. No doubt in my mind that he's trying to find this other lion. So we're just going to go check. I'm sure he's headed to the den site, or the former den site, to see if the females are there. We're just going to check in the Sholimi and see if we can find him. Or we'll come back to the spot. Hang on there. Okay, so we have been defeated by this lone lion. We've driven around now for about an hour and a half. Have not been able to relocate him. Tracks for the lionesses and the cubs all over the show, but we're just not coming right with them. So we're going to call it quits on this area and go move around and see what else has been around. But it's been a little bit quiet this morning, so let's hope things pick up for us. Okay, so in times of quiet drives, there are always other things that we can find in the bush to look at. And one thing that we have been trying to do on these safaris is bring you some of the smaller aspects of the bush. And one of the most common trees that guides like to stop and talk about is this one over here, called a magic guarri or Euclea divinorum. And it's an evergreen that really stands out in winter when everything else is dried and lost their leaves. And this is the only one that we find still looking very green. You can see it's got these wavy edges to their margin, very thick and waxy, which you're obviously not going to see from the screen. But despite it staying green, even during the drought of 2015-2016, the animals just did not touch this. Very, very high tannin content, and you've already seen what happens to Luke and Brittany when you eat trees with high tannin content, so I'm not going to be putting this in my mouth. But that is a defensive mechanism from this tree to ensure that it doesn't get browsed during the winter months. What it is most famous for being, though, is if we come and take a branch over here. Good. It's the traditional use of this tree. If you take one of these medium-sized branches and just scrape off the outer edge, and if you chew it like that, you'll see you get a toothbrush from it. Anyway, really, you do get a bristly inner bark from the branch that you use that you can actually go and use to clean your teeth. There we go, the toothbrush tree, the magic guarri. So we got a question from Dion Vessels about what grasses we have growing in this area. Now, it's a very broad answer, and I'm going to try to keep this short and hopefully a little bit interesting. But there are so many factors that determine what grasses you get in an area, from the climate to the soils to the effects of the animals and the fire regimes that you have. So we have a wide variety, some good grasses, some bad grasses, because not all grasses are created equal. I was once described that essentially you could break down grasses into three types: the steaks, the hamburgers, and hot dogs. The steaks are the good nutritious grasses that all the animals are going to want to eat first. Once that's done, then they will turn to the hamburgers, and only after you've eaten that are you going to go for the hot dogs. And we get in a patch like this a variety of that. The most steaky grass that we have here is this particular one over here called red grass, which is one of the more common grasses in East Africa. It's basically the grass that fuels the migration of the wildebeest in the Serengeti ecosystem. And this is one of our climax species, and we don't get a huge amount of it, but growing in these stands we do get it. So this is going to be one of the more nutritious grasses that the animals are going to want to come and eat. But then growing just next to it we have things like our love grass. This looks to be a hairy love grass, which is a far less palatable. This is a full-on hot dog right here. Because we had the drought in 2015-2016, we had a lot of overgrazing, a lot of denudation of the land, and when re-establishing the grass communities, you get something called the pioneer species that move in there first. These pioneers tend to be annuals that grow every year, produce the seeds and then die, and quite hardy, often quite vicious ways of dispersing the seeds. This one over here, for instance, your tassel 3-awn grass is not a good example. Bad example. I don't think you can see there. This 3-awned grass over here has got quite a sharp spike, and what actually happens is when this gets wet, it can spiral, or despirals actually, and that seed will penetrate either into the hard ground, which is what it's designed to do, but also if there's any animals that get this caught in their coat, will actually start spinning and penetrate into their skin. A real pain for sheep farmers who are wanting to farm for the wool, because this can really ruin the wool of your sheep. But these are hardy species that come in first, establish themselves on the bare ground, and after several years of that, adding nutritious value to the soils when they die, you will then get your intermediate or subclimax grasses, followed by your climax grasses. Because we had the drought so recently, where an area like this would literally have been sand, there would have been no grass left. We still have quite a high number of pioneering species growing in the area, like this, the three-horned lovegrass. Well, actually, I lied, this is an annual three-horn. We've got also some of our old land grass or feathertop chloris here. So all of these are the species that tend to increase in overgrazed areas, and not really ideal to have at the moment, but it is a succession, it is a process, and if we keep on getting good rains like we've had the last couple of years, we will start getting more and more of our stake grasses growing in the area. And I hope that answers a little bit of your question, and that you're still awake and still with us. All right. So our morning is drawing to a close, and quite typical this time of year, late morning is when these prey species prefer to come down and have a drink. There's one dazzle of zebra that's just leaving the water, some wildebeest in the background that have no doubt had a drink here, and the next dazzle very cautiously approaching. What typically happens with these zebras, you can see how they're walking in a line towards the water, and they generally walk in these lines, and it's not just random placement of positions within that line, it's actually have some significance, led by the dominant female, the dominant mare, followed by the second most dominant, and so it goes with the stallion coming up at the back of his harem. But when it comes to drinking, the dominant mare will stop and the stallion will come from the back of the group to the front, and then he will be the one that leads them safely down to water once he is sure that everything is safe. You can see there is understandable caution when these animals approach the water. When they're all drinking heads down, they're going to be vulnerable. They're not going to have their most important sense, their eyesight, looking out for the danger. And especially the zebras, you'll watch when they do go and drink, they don't just stand on the edge, they like the cleaner water, so they'll actually walk a couple of meters into the water, and if any predator were to surprise them and ambush them, it's going to take them a second or two to get out the mud, turn around and start running away. So they want to be very, very sure before they actually go and drink that things are safe here. What you might notice as these zebras are panicking slightly and fleeing from the water is that eruption of birds offer them. Now, we did actually have a request for these from Maria Ardor to see the oxpeckers, and this is what we call a fling of red-billed oxpeckers that are moving around on these zebras. And what they do, they've got this mutualistic symbiosis that has formed between the birds and the zebras, and not just the zebras, but you'll find these oxpeckers on pretty much anything from an impala up to the size of a rhino. And these oxpeckers are moving around on the animals, and they're there to clean the parasites, the external parasites, off their coats. So these birds will clamber around the animal, comb through their fur, and remove any ticks, mites, lices that might be living in the coat of those animals. The host animals are going to benefit by having the parasites removed, and the birds are going to benefit by getting a meal. And a lot of it. There's a lot of parasites, external parasites, that do live in an area like this. Many inappropriate comments I could make about that flatulence as they ran away from the dam, but it is a common trait of zebras and all horse family members that when they run, the bouncing belly that's so full of gas is going to cause some of it to be released. So you do find that they are one of the most flatulent animals about. So we have been discussing the grasses this morning. It looks like we've arrived at the steakhouse. On the banks of the riverbed here, you can just see how tall and lush and nutritious this grass looks. I would be lying to you if I tried to tell you exactly what these ones are, but no doubt we're going to find some good panicum grasses, the buffalo grasses in here, and this is where the grazers would love to come and eat, but you're not going to find your zebras and wildebeest moving around here just because of the thickness of the riverbanks in general. Very, very dangerous. Way up the odds. Good food and the potential of dying, or less good food and a greater chance of actually surviving. So that's why they've stayed out in the drier, less grassy areas, and these big steakhouses remain relatively untouched. Your rhinos, buffaloes and elephants are going to make best use of these grasses here. A Varro's eagle owl calling in the distance. You might hear the high-pitched screech from time to time. Or not. Alright, I do hear one other thing calling. It's breakfast time, so we're going to be heading back to the camp now. Hasn't been the most productive morning. Still a lot of things out there that I hope you've enjoyed, but we're probably going to head out this afternoon just to see if we can add a little bit more action to this video, and we'll catch up then, but we'll see you in a few seconds. Lovely natural settings of our workshop entrance. Beautiful mother warthog with a very cute little piglet. Welcome back to camp, mommy and baby. Very, very regular winter visitors. Anybody that stayed at Tundatula will know that around lunchtime in the winter months, these warthogs come and give our lawn a mow. Up until now, this summer, they've been very, very absent because, there he goes again, doesn't want to run into the long grass. They've been very absent because the grazing conditions have been good away from the camp. But now that things are starting to dry, they remember that where the good grass is. Those steaks, yet again, full circle. Was it pork chops? You can see Mom very comfortable with the cars, but this piglet hasn't been exposed to them too often. A little bit nervous, unsure of us. And just like that, it's afternoon. Wow, the magic of the internet. Yes, it is afternoon. It's been a warm day here at Tundatula, so we waited till it got a little bit cooler this afternoon. We are going to just start off our drive by checking on one or two of the water points, and then around sunset we're going to head back towards the area where we had our male lion this morning and tracks for the rest of the pride, and hope that they give us slightly clearer signs of where they might be. And who knows, maybe a leopard pitches up, but we'll wait and see what the afternoon brings. Sit back and enjoy once again. So although superficially similar to the wildebeest that we did see this morning, this is a much bigger, much more aggressive chap called a buffalo, Cape buffalo, African buffalo, anything but a water buffalo. It's a common mistake for people to come here and refer to these as being water buffalo, and you can understand why. They spend a lot of their time, especially as lone males like this, sitting in the water. I think it has been mentioned in one of our previous episodes about these guys being called Dugger boys. In fact, it was the very first episode where Luke and Britt found one. And Luke mentioned that Dug is a local word for mud, and you can see how this guy has absolutely gone and covered himself in mud, coated himself, which will help keep him cool on a hot day like today, and also help with those parasites. We've seen the rubbing posts and the rubbing trees that these animals use, and he would be one of the prime culprits for leaving mud on those trees. So travelling along the banks of the Shoalini riverbed now, again you can just see from the surrounds, nice and thick and green. We're speaking about the grasses today, that the buffalo grasses that the animals will love to come and eat. It's not just the grazers that fancy these riverbeds, it's also the browsers. This time of year, as autumn is starting to kick in, leaves are starting to lose their moisture, turning a little bit yellow inland. These big browsing animals tend to move towards these riverbeds more and more frequently, where they start making use of the evergreen trees that grow permanently along the riverbanks here. And yeah, we have a nice big fully mature male giraffe who is doing just that. Well, other than the fact he's just standing there not browsing, he is here because he has been eating, but he's watching us as much as we're watching him at the moment. Can't quite make out what tree he's been browsing on there, but clearly got no thorns because he's been putting those branches in his mouth and just stripping the leaves off. which is one advantage of coming and feeding on the trees that haven't got thorns. The disadvantage is that trees that don't have thorns tend to have more chemical defenses, like high levels of tannin or thick waxy cuticles on the leaves. So they tend to be a little bit less palatable than the nice nutritious acacias or ficalias and senegalias that these giraffes prefer eating. About 2/3 of their diet comes off one tree species alone, our knobthorn. But when they're losing their leaves, they move towards these riverbeds. So, guess what Brittany Lioness Street has spotted? Our male lion from this morning, and not very far from where we lost him and where we last heard him calling. He must have just suddenly settled for the day. He was on such a mission this morning, I was convinced he had left the area, but coming back now just after sunset to check, and he's lying in the long grass just off the road. It's where you can see how that mane does make them a lot more conspicuous than the females, and one of the reasons why it is a little bit more difficult for the male lions to hunt. They're very good at hunting, but they go for the bigger things, buffaloes, giraffes, where strength is more important than stealth. And it's a good time evening. He obviously hasn't found the pride. Things are starting to quieten down, the birds are starting to quieten down, and I'm going to be very surprised if he doesn't start roaring within the next few minutes. And off he goes now in search of his pride. A magical scene, full moon rising, male lion walking down the road. Glad he came out this afternoon. Being much better behaved than this morning. Cutting through the bush and completely pulling the wool over our eyes, so we lost him. He's now opting for a much more typical lion walking route, straight along a road. Okay, why else would you go walking through the long grass with the spiky grass seeds and the branches lying everywhere, when we've got this nice, beautifully cleared path that we have made for them? And these pathways become their highways between different parts of their territories, and then certain species like leopards, the roads actually become the physical territorial boundaries between the leopard on that side of the road and the leopard on that side of the road. Scent mark or not scent mark? That is the question. Very typical of lion behavior. Wait until it cools down before they start getting active. No, obviously can only tell you how it feels, but there's been a good change in temperature over the last half an hour as the sun has set, and with those cooling conditions it's now time for these animals that have been lying in the shade all day to get up and get active. So this lion has picked up on a herd of impala that are moving about 30-40 meters in front of him. But I was just saying to Brittany, with the full moon as bright as it is now, those antelopes are going to be able to see very, very well. Not too far off what they'd probably see at a dusk or dawn period. He's got a limp. It's in the open, so his chances of being successful here are very, very low. But he's still confident enough to think that he has got a chance, so he's just kind of perched himself on the edge of the road behind some long grass, and he's going to sit patiently. Maybe he gets lucky, maybe those impalas come wandering towards him into the right position, but if not, he will try edge closer once they're out of view. So we'll give it a little bit of time. We'll notice we're not shining the light on him. We don't want to put him at a disadvantage by shining on him, and we don't want to disadvantage a prey by shining on them either. So in situations like this where predators are hunting at night, we tend just to sit still, sit quietly, and go lights out and let nature play out on its own. I don't think he was ever that serious about his hunts. He was getting distracted very easily, and it's like us in the morning when you just wake up. You're not really ready to do anything, and he's been sleeping since we last saw him this morning up until now. So just taking a little bit to get into it. And we mustn't think that just because he's a lone male he can't hunt. It's just that the odds are stacked heavily against him, and his hunting success will increase tremendously when he's cooperating with the lionesses or even hunting with his coalition partners. And even then, at the best of times, depending on the study and the area, the number of lions in the pride, but on average you'd estimate that lions are probably only successful about 1 out of every 5 hunting efforts. So not very good. One thing you are going to pick up watching this footage at night is that the background sounds are very different. Much quieter. We can hear the stridulation of a grasshopper calling on the side, that constant chee 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 chee. And you may also just heard the rather beautiful call of a fiery-necked nightjar, one of our nocturnal insect-eating birds.